We've got quite the guest today. As you all know, I focus a lot of
It's Nick Fury.
my policy work on beating the Mexican drug cartels. So no better person than this man standing right next to me, whose name I will not say, but who operated with the Sinaloa drug cartel for.
Why whose name I will not say? Because he did the Andy Biggs interview the same day, and they said his name all over the place. So I don't know what they think they're trying to hide here.
Years and years and years. He and his twin brother, I won't say where they were born. I've got the bio, but I'm not going to say any of the details here.
He won't say where they're born. He got the bio. Don't they? These fools probably got a Wikipedia page at this point. We've actively gone over their story for a year. We damn near got the address in Little Village on 26th Street that they lived on. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here?
But about my age, born in the early 1980s. First exposure to the world of drug trafficking occurred in his early life when him and his brother accompanied his father on trips to Mexico. His father would transport drugs in hidden compartments and vehicles from Mexico into the United States, using payments he received from the cartel to just make ends meet. Soon thereafter, him and his brother were heavily involved in the drug trade, rising up to a level of trust after personal meetings with Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who was head of the Sinaloa cartel. And pretty soon, those brothers were responsible for all the Sinaloa cartel drugs that flowed into the Midwest area, amassing a fortune in the process. In 2008, they decided to move their operation to Mexico, but still controlled the Sinaloa cartel distribution operations from their homes
I don't know that they decided to move their operation to Mexico. They were on the run here.
south of the border. In 2008, after being caught in the middle of the two warring factions of the Sinaloa cartel, they both decided to cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. They cooperated with U.S. law enforcement from Mexico for several months, passing on actionable leads about drug loads arriving in L.A. or Chicago. And based on this information, law enforcement was able to seize large drug shipments as well as large amounts of U.S. currency in these cities and elsewhere.
They were gifting the United States government loads that dumb fools didn't even know what to do with. The government. These guys were the head of their own operation. No help.
And left out here that you went to prison for 12 years, 14 years sentence, 12 years served. So that's pretty recently got out. Now instructs law enforcement officers around the country on cartel operations, drug distribution techniques, and other operational protocols used by the cartel. So I wanted to get that summary out of the way. Sir, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, sir.
And thank you for addressing the cartel task force. That's the meeting we just came from. Give us some valuable insight into how this stuff works. So I read your basic story. Maybe we can dive into some details there. You said what you told us in there was your first interaction with the drug trade was age 7. So that's a trip to Mexico with your father. How does that work?
It was supposed to be my first vacation with our father.
Yo, Jay's voice went mad deep, boy.
With your father, how does that work?
It was supposed to be my first vacation with our father, for me and my twin brother. We thought we were going on our first trip. Drove from where I was born and raised and made a 32-hour trip to central Mexico, where we thought as kids it was, the first time we ever saw cows, right? Cows and cornfields and.
Yeah, we're going 7 years old. Poppy's home from jail. We're going on vacation. You're part of the cover.
Being a city boy, that was unique to us, and we actually enjoyed those trips. But my father took us up to the mountains in central Mexico, where it was going to be our first interaction with a legal drug, which was marijuana at the time. And basically, it started at the age of 7. Where he would begin to teach us every part of business, from the cultivation, harvesting to, packaging, the hiding of the drugs in those compartments, to smuggling them across the border. In the beginning, it was really just, he would do things that like just chance and risk, and we were like his cover loads. We were, at that time, because we were twins, we were still unique.
Yeah. distraction for a customs officer. As cute kids, yeah.
At that time, I don't think it was as common that a Mexican drug trafficker would use his family. It was still like taboo, where family wouldn't get involved. For my father, it was a little bit different. And
Margarito didn't give a
that
damn.
first trip, I actually was be the first time I was actually questioned or interrogated by a federal officer.
First trip.
My father didn't bring our birth certificates along, so we were called up for the second inspection and interrogated about who our parents were, and family. And in the car, he had, I think it was 220 pounds of marijuana.
Wow. That's nothing.
So yes, at that early age, we started to learn, everything that involved drug trafficking. And my father made sure it was a lesson. We learned the interstates, the fastest routes, the safest routes.
Where was your mom during all this?
My mom would, for the most part, in the beginning, she would come along those trips. I think just that old school, Mexican mentality where she didn't really have a say-so.
Are they from Mexico? I mean, were they born and raised in Mexico?
Yeah, born and raised
they
in
immigrated
Mexico. My father's excuse was that, he grew up very poor. And it was a way of making ends meet in his eyes.
Do you have any relationship with him now? What's
this guy knows nothing. How? See, this is the part that I don't be understanding. You're chasing cartel. Your whole crusade is the cartel, and you don't know the story of the two guys in its entirety. It ain't like their father's demise is disconnected from their story. It's part of their story. So for him not to know that is more egregious than Johnny Mitchell not knowing what he didn't know. That's crazy. You still got a good relationship with him? You just teaching me a class about what you don't know. Mind you, we didn't know until we knew, right? But we're also not Captain America, anti-OC, organized crime cartel guy. You supposed to be the crusade guy, and you know nothing about the guy that gave you the biggest fish you got in your dungeon.
Relationship with him now? What's
my father was presumed murdered by the cartel because of my cooperation.
You goofy,
in
Dan.
2009.
Wow.
So when it comes to drug trafficking, I think I've lived
And then not only that, Jay spoke to the Republican committee that day, and he spoke to Andy Biggs. Buddy been around all day long. That was coming. You're Mr. Cartel guy. You know nothing about nothing.
Me and my family lived through every possible scenario or problem issue or that comes with drug trafficking. At the age of 13, I lost my brother to a heroin overdose.
It's your twin brother.
My older brother.
And he's confused as hell. He just told the man, me and my brother grew to be the biggest traffickers, blah, blah, blah. No, bull. He didn't even tell him. Dude read it to him, reading the bio. Him and his twin brother raised to these heights in the cartel and whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. Right now, he just said, man, I lost my brother to drugs at the age of 14. He's like, oh, your twin brother? Bruh, get it together, bruh. Are you paying attention? Are you listening?
Family and never it's been,
twin brother.
At the age of 13, I lost my brother to a heroin overdose.
It's your twin brother.
My older brother. So it's been, constant in my family and never blamed the drugs. It was always, blame the person who was actually, involved, including my brother. So yes.
That's something that they've made clear about their father before, that he'd never blamed the game. He blamed the people, but he never blamed the game.
Your distribution network increased and increased and increased. So it started small, like I said, just sounds like just a single car, just moving some stuff across. It eventually becomes an operation where, how many people were working under you?
Well, for my father's organization, I saw his organization grow, but I also had an older brother who was, considered a drug kingpin in the city we grew up in, and he had a different type of business. It was a different drug. It was my father's drug was marijuana. My older brother was cocaine, and we started at 13. My father left to Mexico on the run from an indictment, and left us with my older brother, where we started picking up that trade and started to learn distribution. And I guess that part of the business. And when turning 17, my older brother was indicted for a federal drug charge. And of course, I left that vacuum of financial, help, I guess. And we were 17, and basically it was like, okay, you guys are on your own after this. And he forbade us, like, you're not gonna do is sell drugs. And it was just one of those things that it's all we knew. His connections we were always around. We were his helpers.
So it was easy to slide into that operation.
Actually, it was actually a doorknock where his source of supply
Doorknob.
sent someone to our house and said he wanted to speak to us. And he basically said, you guys could do this. So our first deal wasn't a small deal by far. Our first deal was for 30 kilograms of cocaine, which at that time was over $500,000. And we sold those 30 kilos of cocaine in 3 hours.
3 hours. So we've been saying in a day. In a day. This fool just said 3 hours. I don't know how many people you could have handed that bag and them done that. Flipped that like that. I don't know. Again, they had a network. They had standing. People knew who they were. So all that helps.
Oh, I mean, do you have people who like work corners on the street? I mean, how do you, or do you actually doing the selling? I mean, everybody has a different piece of this puzzle.
Because for the most part, we were wholesalers. We knew wholesaler customers, and basically we took the 30 kilos and we broke it down into fives and tens, and to people who we actually knew in the street, and it just started from there. I think the next day we received a 50 kilo shipment, and we sold 50 kilos that day, and basically we just never looked back. So it started to increase. By the time I was 18. I was moving anywhere from 300 to 400 kilos a month, for being 17, 18-year-old. For me and my brother making, $1 million a month, it was kind of addiction of its own, right?
Yeah,
Hell
no,
yeah.
'cause I asked,
Addiction of its own, boy. I'd have been strung out. I'd have been strung
I
out.
asked you in the earlier meeting, like, is there anything that would have stopped you and deterred you? You've already seen your dad have to flee the country because of an indictment. Your brother was just indicted, and it still doesn't deter you. So, from when we look at this from a lawmaking perspective, I'm like,
And that's where it's at. He's looking at it from a lawmaking perspective. And a lawmaking perspective is like, well, if you do this to them, they won't want to do it. Somebody always gonna do it. Somebody always gonna dare. You could scare, you could all the propaganda you want. Some people gonna go.
it seems like there's nothing. I mean, with the death penalty, like, I don't know. I mean, what would actually deter, people in your position from doing this, or is it just
Nigga, see,
deter?
he thinks
your
from
brother
policy.
was just indicted, and it still doesn't deter you. So, from when we look at this from a lawmaking perspective, I'm like, it seems like there's nothing. I mean, with the death penalty, like, I don't know. I mean, what would actually deter, people in your position from doing this, or is it just there's just always going to be somebody who's willing to take the risk to make to make what it was an incredible amount of cash?
Always.
Well, just to add to that brief history, my father came out of prison at the age of 7. So that was going to be his second.
Okay, so it had already been gone.
I think it's, where I was looking for that deterrence. I think for me, with this unique background, just being involved in it, it's basically the only life I ever knew at that time. They would literally take me out of school to go on the trips. And it was our life. But I think wherever there's a way to make a profit, I think that there's always going to be someone who's willing to
Just willing to take that risk.
I think, I say it all the time, for the most part, my brother and I are considered to be probably the most successful drug traffickers, but the prisons are filled with failed drug traffickers and failed criminals, right?
I mean, does it?
Chucky Chigong said, Dan, he said the death penalty. This dude's a cowboy. Absolutely. He loved that. But what good would that do? What's the death penalty to somebody dying of starvation? Stop.
But the prisons are filled with failed drug traffickers and failed criminals, right?
I mean, is there anybody who doesn't get caught eventually? Is there anybody out there that we've just,
Yes. I know one person, and I'm sure you know him too, Almaya Zambada, who's the head of the Sinaloa Cartel. He's been the head for over 45 years.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jay. I don't know if Dan Crenshaw knows him. You might have just hipped him to El Mayo, you know, because this guy, being Captain America, he don't know much. Or he's playing dumb.
Over 45 years.
Yeah.
So there's those unique circumstances, and
I guess I mean more in like the kind of the local U.S. based inner city distribution networks. It seems like you always get caught eventually.
yes, even for us, I think that for the most part, our daily lives were based upon not getting caught.
Mm-hmm.
We based as our work from the time we turned 17 on, and eventually we were indicted in 2004. And we basically did what our father did. We went on the run to Mexico. And it was like a safe haven, right? You know, you're back where it was my second home from going back and forth so many times as a kid. And we, to us, it was just like a way to restart.
What part of Mexico?
Central Mexico is the state of Zacatecas, which is central Mexico. But mainly we lived in Guadalajara, in Jalisco, the city of Guadalajara.
So you moved down to Mexico. You have a home there. What caused you to say, all right, enough is enough. It's time to cooperate with U.S. law enforcement? And then who was that? Was it DEA?
Well, I think that from my brother and I think we were always in this gray zone where I say this all the time, where I was too good for the bad guys and too, bad for the good guys. And I think that my brother and I did look at this as a business, and that was it. It was a business. It was a way for us to generate income. And we always looked at it from that perspective. Of course, in our earlier days in the United States, we went through home invasions. My brother was kidnapped for ransom by a law enforcement officer in the United States. So many different scenarios I could think that we went through. It still was just, to us, was a part of the life. And
Wait, what do you mean kidnapped for ransom by a law enforcement?
yes,
How did that work? So like,
He's so surprised. Like, one of ours? You mean a thin blue liner kidnapped your brother? What do you mean? I don't believe this. What? Not in my America. They don't do that in my America. In America? A law enforcement officer in America kidnapped your brother? We don't do that. Stop it, man. Just blind. No pun intended.
a part of the life. And
wait, what do you mean kidnapped for ransom by a law enforcement?
yes,
How did that work? So like, a dirty cop was kidnapped your brother, knowing
Yeah.
you guys have a bunch of cash.
Yeah.
kidnapped him for a total of $2.5 million. Held him for 4 days in a basement, tied up to a pole.
And you paid it.
And I paid it. I mean, I had the choice between, at that time, it was either I could call, the feds and maybe get my brother back, or I could pay it and just, because stay out of prison, right? Because once you call them,
I mean, how do you have? So how much? What's the kind of cash you would have on average at any given time? I mean, $2.5 million's not.
as I was saying,
I think this dude want to get in the game. He's like, how much of that cash could you fit under the bed and in the closet? You know what I'm saying?
as I was saying before, by the time my brother got kidnapped, around that time, I was making anywhere from $3 to $5 million a month profit.
Dang, profit.
So that to us was just
Look at his face.
$1 million a month profit. So that to us was just another expense, right? Added expense to the business. And for us, I do say that we're probably one of those unique cases where we were successful. But yes, there's money to be made in the drug trade, and that's why there's so many inspiring drug traffickers.
So the $3 million a month, that's all cash. Where you? And this is when you were living in the U.S. So where are you putting all that?
Strip club, restaurant, store.
What I think made my brother and I
Barbershop.
successful was that we didn't want to do was owe a drug cartel money. So what we did was we invested it back into the business, which allowed us to have more time to be able to receive more drugs and give those drugs out on consignment. So
this is for all of you people that be in the comments talking to me, talking about it's because they owed, it's because they owed, it's because they owed. A linchpin of their business was to pay up, to not owe nobody. They was paying up front. They was paying cash. And what I mean by cash is they weren't fronting until they flipped it. If they fronted it for a day or two, that's one thing. That's just to move money around.
So we basically would invest it back in the business, and there was a time we had a surplus of $20 million, meaning they owed us.
Look at that. Look at that. They owed us. These dudes stacked so much that they were owed. Stop it.
Like insurance, so that just in case the worst thing could have happened and we lost a big shipment, that we could pay for it.
Yeah.
Because
very smart.
The cartel never loses. Someone, some way is going to pay.
So you're not spending a ton of money then on flashy cars.
In my earlier,
he said, so you're not spending a ton of money on flashy cars. That's what you got to understand. There was enough money to spend on flashy cars and to do what they did and get 20 million in surplus. There was enough for all of that. That's how much money was running out there. And Jay, don't sugarcoat it now. We know. Y'all was running around with the Rangers and the Bentleys. Stop it. We heard it all. Surviving on Chapo.
In my earlier days, I would. To me, it would be like it got to a point where I could, spend large amounts of money. If I spent, $400,000 or $500,000 a month, to me it was like it's not a lot of money. We got used to that type of life, and it only increased when we got to Mexico. So once we were in Mexico, the hardships continued. My brother got kidnapped again by Mexican law enforcement officers in the orders of Chapo Guzman. Mm. And that ransom, or that was a little bit more expensive. We had to pay $10 million.
Jeez.
And
Dan ain't above having the same reaction that we have. Shit. Damn.
And that ransom, or that was a little bit more expensive. We had to pay $10 million.
Jeez.
And that's where my business relationship with Chapo Guzman, Miles Zambada, and Arturo Chanleva, which were the heads of the Sinaloa Cartel at the time, began.
So they tell a Mexican police officer to take that action.
Yes.
Because they want the money, or because they want to send a message?
Well,
did the police officers even keep that money? Or like,
bruh, it was a whole deeper. Let me tell you, Mr. Crenshaw, it was a whole deeper situation than that. It was their tío, Lupe Ledesma, that was owing Chapo the money, but he put that debt on them, all right? And then Chapo found out by using them to get the info, and then he still charged them the $10 million. He knew that they didn't owe him. So it's way deeper than you're even thinking as you sit there. Like, okay, so they tell the officer, and I get it. He's probably just talking in generalizations, but it doesn't seem like you know much about the cartel. It don't seem like you know much about the enemy that you're facing.
Police officers even keep that money? Or like, you cut? Like, what? How does this work?
Bro, you
at
wildin'.
that time, we had a, we had.
He's caught up on the police officer. That's the whole law enforcement in him. He's caught up on the police officer. Forget the fact that there's 20 million that's out there. Let's say 20 million because Chapo double charged it. He knows Lupe owes him 10, and now he's saying the twins owe him 10. You know what I'm saying? $20 million. This guy's worried about the cop corruption and shit.
Want to send a message?
Well,
did the police officers even keep that money? Or like, you cut? Like, what? How does this work?
At that time, we had a, we had, all our business was done in the U.S. We had never, like, associated with actually, like, a boss at the time. It was always middlemen. They send distributors, middlemen to look for customers, and that's how it works. And that person that was our middleman or distributor was taking his, or could have.
773-707 wilding in the chat. He said, dude looks like Calvin Candy from Django. He sure does, bruh. He stripped right out of Quentin Tarantino's Django.
Was taking his, or could have took a loss, and in his mind it would have been easier just to put the blame on us, not understanding that we already had a relationship with other, high-ranking drug traffickers, and the plan backfired. And the only thing that was we were fortunate of is that they didn't kill my brother, but Chapo sent the federal police, and they kidnapped him for 22 days.
It's crazy to think. Okay, so again, it's worth noting El Chapo
It's crazy to think. It's the truth, papas.
sent the police.
He's hung up on this police shit. The police is the least of Mr. Candy.
It's crazy to think. Okay, so again, it's worth noting. El Chapo sent the police to kidnap him because that's how corrupt the situation is there.
You say that, and to me, it's like,
Nothing.
In Mexico, that's very
Nothing.
normal.
To him, it's normal.
like-
Small potatoes.
In Mexico, that's very normal. It's a bit out of the norm what you mentioned about a U.S. police officer.
absolutely.
That's not as normal.
That's not normal.
Yeah, you're just very lucky.
It's pretty normal here too. You'll find more than just Saul and his cops. The Finnegan was out there too. There's a lot of guys out there.
My brother was very lucky, yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing you see at a movie. But
Yeah,
that's
bro.
normal in Mexico. I mean, they're the same people. And so how do you prevent the police in Mexico from going down this path? Or do they just have no choice because it's it's plato plomo?
For the most part,
He got his plato plomo line in there.